Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Trudy Murato, volunteer community ambassador with AARP Virginia here in Northern Virginia. From our earliest beginnings, AARP has championed lifelong learning. That's why AARP Virginia is thrilled to bring you our third year of Tuesday Explorers, a lifelong learning program offered every Tuesday from January through the end of April at 3 o'clock Eastern Time for our curious explorers. For more than 60 years, AARP has been a wise friend and a fierce defender, helping individuals to ensure that their money, health, and happiness live as long as they do. AARP has earned a reputation as this wise friend and fierce defender through trusted information, tools, and advocacy designed to protect the health and financial security of older Americans and empower them to choose how they live as they age. And by promising to act as this wise friend and fierce defender, AARP is helping people who are 50 plus and their families feel confident, in control, and secure as they age. As this wise friend in your corner, AARP helps you protect yourself and your loved ones from frauds and scams through our Fraud Watch Network. Get healthy and stay healthy, care for loved ones, make connections, plan a trip, learn new technologies, attend a class, and have fun, like what we're doing here today with our Tuesday Explorer program. I hope you'll continue to take advantage of these opportunities and more. And now let me turn the program over to my colleague, Lily Lou. Lily, it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Trudy. It's always a delight to be able to partner with you. I call you my partner in crime as we have such fun on Tuesday Explorer, Tuesday afternoon get-togethers between January and April. I'd like to first give a shout out to AARP Virginia for this wonderful idea for all of us to be in community during the colder months of the year. Between January and April, we can gather in community every Tuesday afternoon 3 to 4 p.m. East Coast time, and be able to learn, because lifelong learning has always been a goal of AARP since its very beginning. Today, we are so honored to have an incredible guest. And I saw already somebody put in the chat, ready for haiku. And another first student has already said, will we get the recording? Not only will you get the recording, we're going to send it out, the information where you can go on the AARP Virginia YouTube link. And you're also going to get this PowerPoint in a PDF so you can go over things. Wonderful to have people interested in joining us. Without further ado, let me go ahead and share this PowerPoint, because you're going to see some wonderful things that we can do together here. Today, what we have is a very special guest, because this is one of the most important things as we go out there and see whom have we met during these years of the pandemic that we can bring to a larger community. It was my honor. I have not yet met Miho Kinnas, IRL, as the millennials say, in real life, but she has become a friend and mentor virtually. And today it is our absolute honor to have her join us, because she is really one of the outstanding modern poets of contemporary writing. And we'd like to be able to have her give us a little workshop, not only what is haiku, but give us a chance to actually participate. So may I begin, please, Miho? And I'm just going to call you by the first name, Miho. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you.
Yes. Hi, my name is Miho Kinnas. Thank you for having me, ARP Virginia, and truly, really nice to see you, and very nice to see everybody who came today. Thank you. Thank you for coming. So I am Japanese. I was born and raised in Japan, but I have been writing creatively in English for about 25 years. And I don't know if that's long or short. But I published 3 books. I'll talk about my books a little later. But last year, 2023, my 25th year of writing in English, my poem was selected for Best American Poetry 2023. So I felt very lucky, and it was a very good mark for the first phase of my writing. So I keep going from here on. So before I begin, please ask any questions or comment in the chat section. I would like to know, there's so much I can talk about haiku, but people may have different interests. So if you have a burning question, please do set it in, and they'll let me know what questions are, and I do my best to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, so as I said, not quite yet, Lily, but it's okay. I'll keep on talking. So, I said I was born and raised in Japan, and haiku is everywhere in Japan. For example, if you open newspaper, you see some haiku in there, and you open the magazine, and it doesn't have to be a literary magazine, just a general news, economic, political magazines. You often see haiku in it. So there are so many people, hundreds and thousands of Japanese people writing haiku all the time, all this time, I would say. So also like in a tea bag, I buy certain green tea and it comes in a separate packet, and they print haiku written by children, adults, students, older people. It's really everywhere. And the most famous haiku poets, I wonder how many of you would know, I've heard of his name. His name is Basho. He lived in the 17th century, mid 1600 Japan. He was born shortly after Shakespeare died, about that time. And he is still the master of haiku. But haiku is not the only poetry written in Japan. Of course, we have free verse poetry, we have tanka, we have, of course, lyrics and songs, waka, kyoka, senryu. There are so many different types of Japanese poetry. But haiku is one of the most popular poetic form it is. Let me see. Let's talk about history a little bit. So the very first anthology, poetic anthology, was put together, completed in the 8th century, the late 700s. There are 4,000 verses in it. I understand 4,000 to 5,000 verses. It was a huge anthology. However, haiku was not in it. Haiku was buried in it. So haiku came later. So there were longer poetry, and then just the first part of the long poems become independent, and that became haiku. So by the time Basho came along, it was called Hoku. It's a little different name, but it became almost independent. However, it was a group effort. It was always written in groups. One person writes a verse, next person goes, follows, and then another person follows. It keeps on going. So, individual authorship, as we know today, is relatively a new concept. That has something to do with the big event in history. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, so you see the familiar name here, Ezra Pound. So Japan was actually closed until the end of 19th century. So was China. And well, of course, the imperialism was at its height, and Japan had to open the country. But as soon as we opened the country, there was so much interactions. We learned a lot of engineering, government systems, university systems, and art and culture. Everything Western started coming to Japan. And haiku was one of our export at that time. So there was an American scholar named Ernest Fenollosa of Boston. Some people must be familiar with his name. He was collecting a lot of Japanese poetry and Chinese poetry. But before he was really able to write a book, he passed away. And his widow gave the document to Ezra Pound. So Ezra Pound talked a lot about Chinese poetry, Japanese poetry. By the way, Chinese poetry and Japanese poetry are very different. And in maybe up until 1900s, very educated Japanese people were able to write traditional style Chinese poetry. But it's a very complicated, very difficult form. So it is not written as much these days. Haiku is a little bit easier, I think. So Ezra Pound, I was talking about Ezra Pound. He studied Oriental poetry and he found how different poetry was. And this is one of his poems. And I found this poem in the anthology of 100 haiku written in English, the first 100 years. The first haiku that's listed in the anthology was this poem. It's not exactly in haiku format. However, in essence, in the aesthetic of haiku, the essence of haiku is in this poem. It just captured the moment, the apparition of these faces in the crowd. He's at the station, the metro station, and they look like petals on a wet black bow. So, that makes you kind of think about it. What is he? Then you know what he was looking at. You can imagine, and then you have your own thought. So that's what the haiku does. I teach a lot of haiku-based workshops, and classes tend to be very popular. And I think there is something very special about haiku. And the characteristics of haiku, it is short. It is very short. And some people think, I sometimes think, haiku is short, so easy to write. But because haiku is so short, it's very difficult to write good haiku. So that's always, it's almost a dilemma in its challenge, but that's the beauty of it. So haiku was, well, as I said, exported from Japan to the rest of the world. Actually, the first foreigner, Westerner, who translated haiku into another language, it's said to be a Mexican diplomat who translated it into Spanish. And then there are French people who translated into French. Then the English people came. That's when they started write haiku in 3 lines as we see it these days. So I'm going to talk about, with the latest slides, I'm going to show you a lots of examples. We're going to go back to Basho as well. So I like to dive into the examples and then really try to figure out what is haiku. Okay, Lily, next slide, please. Okay, let's read this one, first one. Spring sunlight outlines her bent head, mother nursing. So this is a painting. It's really an image, but it makes you think about or remember something. Second one, half the sky a deeper blue, midlife birthday. First 2 lines, again, you have seen the sky like that. There is a demarcation line in the middle of the sky. And the third line, this person gave you a little comment, midlife birthday. I don't know, 40, 45, or 50 years old birthday, and you see the sky, cut in the middle. We all remember something like that. Okay, so these are something very visual. Let's move on to the next example, please. So this one, summer storm, the windscreen wipers slice our silence. So we can see, windscreen wipers moving. It's very visual. But if you notice, summer, storm, screen, slice, silence, all those S sounds are included. It's a craft of poetry, not only in haiku, but in haiku also, you can do this. They give you this sound, as if it's raining hard and the wiper moving, all the sound. But he says it's slice silence. So this contrast is very beautiful. So it's not only image, you hear the sound, and you can do that in words as well. Next one is kind of my favorite, Dog Days. the mailbox door hangs open. So I can feel the heat, and it's actually humorous. You know, the mailbox, the door hanging like a dog on a very, very hot day. So it's visual, but it's a little bit more layered. So you can see, I mean, look at this. It's haiku. It's very short haiku, only 3 lines. How many words? 7 words. And then this Josh Wyckoff, the haiku poet, gave us a really memorable picture. I think that's quite amazing. Okay, next slide, please. So, definition. Some people love definition, some people don't. Haiku is a short poem, as we saw, that uses imagistic language, yes, to convey the essence of an experience of nature or the season, intuitively linked to the human condition. Often, when I go visit schools, a lot of students and teachers tell me haiku is a nature poem. Yes and no. You know, I think poetry is always about human condition. We use nature because it's all around us. And also, nature tends not to offend people either. So it's a great tool, you know, it's a great object to use and then reflect your thought onto it. So this is one way that Haiku Society of America defines haiku. If you have any questions or comment, please put in the chat. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay. Richard Wright and Basho, and these are probably the most famous haiku written by these poets. Richard Wright, as you know, he is more known as a novelist, right? And he was born in Mississippi, moved to Chicago, but later in his life, he spent most of time in Europe. And his haiku, he wrote thousands of haiku only toward the end of his life. He was ill, he was very lonely. Haiku he wrote, he is remembering his days in Mississippi. So some of the scenery, I feel familiar living in South Carolina now. The magnolia always appears in watermelons and some of the creatures. And it's very southern scenery in his haiku too. And this one, in the falling snow, a laughing boy holds out his palms until they are white. So Richard Wright, being African-American writer, this poem is often discussed with race in America as a topic. So it's one of the most talked about haiku by him. In a different way, Basho, this haiku, maybe some of you might have heard of this. It's one of the most famous haiku. An old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water. Both haiku make you think. It sounds very simple at first, but if you start to think, okay, the frog jumps in, the sound of water. What did he hear? What did he wanted to write? So this was written like 400 years ago, maybe almost 400 years ago, and scholars and haiku fans still discuss this haiku, partly because is this like a Zen poem? Or is it like something to do with animism? Or, you know, also in Japanese, we don't have the distinction between plural and singular. So in this translation, he said an old pond and a frog. But in the Japanese original, it's furuike ya kawazu tobikomu mizu no oto. There's no indication of how many frogs are there. We don't know that. So there is so much discussion going on. Richard Wright definitely studied Japanese traditional haiku. He has many haiku that almost sounds like basho, and also Busan. Let's go to the next slide, please. So Busan on the right-hand side, on the top, lighting one candle with another candle, spring evening. He is about 100 years after Basho, so it's still, pre-modern poet. However, he was a painter as well. He was actually a professional painter who did haiku almost on the side. So as you can see, this haiku is very visual, and it's like you are zooming into the candle. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem. And let's go back to Richard Wright on left. Burning out its time and timing its own burning, one lovely candle. I have to stop and think about it every time I read burning out its time and timing its own burning. You just have to think about it. I have read somewhere his daughter, Julie Wright, she lives in Paris. She said, this is definitely his father, her father is what she said. So I very much enjoy this piece. And then we're talking about time, I think, lighting one candle with another candle. That makes you think about passage of time, the importance of each moment. But Basho had a little different take. He goes like end of the year. It goes along and goes along until the year's end. Basho changed the haiku, adding this kind of humor, a little bit of lightness, but a humanness. And that's what he's credited for. He added the different aesthetics to haiku, kind of raised it to a higher art form. Some of you might have heard words like wabi and sabi. Those are the Japanese aesthetics. And he added those into the world of haiku at the same time, the humors and the lightness. One thing I might add here is Richard Wright wrote his haiku in 5-syllable, 7-syllable, 5 syllables, burning out its time, 5, and timing its own burning, 7, one lovely candle. So Richard Wright, most of his haiku is exactly 5, 7, 5 syllables. That's something also you learn at school. But we're going to say a little bit more about this 5, 7, 5 a little later. But I just want you to note that Richard Wright wrote it strictly. He challenged himself to make sure he writes in the right syllables. Okay. Next slide, please. So this 5, 7, 5. In Japanese, typical haiku has 17 sounds. I read, furuike ya, kawazu tobikomu, mizu no oto, like that. That's our 5, 7, 5 sounds. For example, furuike ya, it takes 5 sounds just to say an old pond. In English, it's only 2 syllables. But in Japanese, I already used up 5 syllables. So you know what happens when I try to translate English haiku into Japanese, I normally cannot translate everything. There is so much you can say in 5 syllables compared to 5 sound. So that's one of my problems, at least. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So I have this one, Basho's Japanese haiku, another one. You can see in the romanized pronunciation, iza yukan, yukimi ni korobu tokoro made. So you can count, when you receive your PDF file, you can look at the characters and you can count 5, 7, 5, how we use the sound. So, well, then let's go snow viewing until this is mistypo. Sorry, we fall down, not the call down, sorry, we fall down. So that's his humor is appearing in this haiku. I like this English haiku, Betty Drebnik, Deep Snow, peeling potatoes, dark earth on my hands. She is not following 575 rules in this case. Deep snow, peeling potatoes. I like this PP sound, and the deep and then dark. It's very beautiful, beautiful written. And there are lots of beautiful snow haiku. So you can just Google snow haiku and you'll see tons of those. It's really beautiful. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So I wanted to introduce a few different type of haiku. So the haiku came to the West, as I said, late 19th century. Yes, the 1800, late 1800s, early 1900. But by mid-century, so it's like a modern haiku. This is James Emanuel. Everything is jazz. Snails, jails, rails, tails, males, female, snow white cotton bales. Oh, I love this rhyming, and this is really called jazz haiku. There are a lot of African American, not only African American poets, but mainly so they started it. There is a thing called jazz haiku. There is a blues haiku, and it's a modern invention, and it's one of the most unique kind of haiku. We have some jazz haiku in Japanese, but no, it's not that great. I think his haiku, especially this one, is my favorite. It's really fun and really shows, you can hear the music from it. So I brought a modern Japanese haiku poet. Shiki is his name. He died very young, but he wrote many haiku. He contributed a lot. He also translated baseball terms into Japanese. We still use some of the words that he translated, and he loved playing baseball. I mean, he was ill, so he could not play, but for a long time, but he missed to be out on the field. So this is one of his, toward the end of his life, first day of the year, unsatisfied about things since dawn. It's New Year's, but his day was not going all that well. He wrote every day about everything. And that's another sign of modern haiku. It's not about nature. It's not about being elegant, writing about everyday life. That's really the sign of modern day haiku. Okay, let's go to the next one. I have some, this is a contemporary North Carolinian poet, Leonard D. Moore. He writes jazz haiku. He's a veteran, so he writes about soldier haiku, a very versatile, very prolific poet. He was the first African-American president of Haiku Society of America. And I was fortunate to write many, many verses with him. I wrote probably hundreds of haiku, verse 5, 7 sound haiku with him. And I gained a lot of haiku muscle through writing with him. So, okay, let's move on to the next one. There's some more. Etheridge Knight is also a very well-known jazz haiku person, but he was incarcerated at one point, and that's when he studied. He read a lot of books, and he became a poet. So you can see his haiku: Eastern Guard Tower, glints in sunset, convict arrest like lizard on rocks. Often we say not to use simile like lizard on rocks, but sometimes some poets choose to put it in there to have the word count right. And African American poet I spoke to, they said they will use whatever they could use. So just let me do what I want to do, I was often told. And I think that makes their haiku really special. Okay, so next screen, please. I just realized I quoted so many male poets, and I wanted to add some Sonia Sanchez haiku. She is the queen of blues haiku. There are a lot of women haiku. I myself write haiku. I call it often kitchen haiku because I write about food and things about, things you do in the kitchen. But one time, earlier times, kitchen haiku was not a good expression. That was kind of making fun of women poets. So, oh, those women writing kitchen haiku, there was such a time. But today I proudly write actually kitchen haiku. I hope you spend some time reading her poems when you receive PDF file. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. So this is what he's saying is most of the time it's unrhymed lines and 17 or fewer syllables. We have already seen that. But most of the time there's a short line, 3 words, so maybe 4 or 5 words, 3 words. That became sort of a standard of length. So there is no strict syllable count restriction per se. Poetic form is just a guideline. We can always break it. There's no penalty for it. But I feel that I should be able to justify every word, every phrase I use. And because there's limited space, we really need to think it through. So, but we don't have to stick to 5 syllables if you don't want to. Okay, next slide, please. So I think this is the last slide of poems I show you. He wrote a very memorable haiku. So first one, this is maybe the most famous one, Lily, Lily, hi Lily, Lily, out of the water, out of itself. So he's talking about water, Lily. Lily out of the water, out of itself. After the bell, within the silence, within myself. So we are going in, it's an image in a way. The lily is an image. However, what he is talking about is more our inner life, more philosophical, if we say. And then after the bell, you hear the bell ring. It could be Western church bell, it could be Japanese temple bell, it could be either. And then you hear the echoes keep going, echo inside the bell, and then it becomes quiet. And then within myself, it's the poem is coming inside and inside. The last one is by a dump. The poet goes to the dump. By a dump, composing poems. If you had to guess the third line, would you say fireflies? I thought that's maybe flies, regular flies, maybe flying around or something dirty you'd expect. But he said a dump. I'm writing a poem, and here's fireflies. It's a very nice surprise, and I think surprise is very important in poems. Every poem needs a surprise. Maybe, something like this, something placed at the end is not something you had expected. That's a surprise. And also the choice of word. You explain same things, but you use a surprising word choice. Or how you organize the poem. You could create a surprise. And always, if you just say, and everybody says, so, okay, oh yeah, I think you're right. That's not very fun. You want people to think, oh, so that's what we're looking for. Okay, so Lily, are we good to start our little exercise?
Definitely are. First, let me just take a moment to thank you. That was a master class in haiku.
Thank you.
You took us through thousands of years. You took us through tradition. You took us through innovation. And to think about you not only writing yourself in English, but also helping to introduce Japanese poetry by translating into English, and then going in the other direction. You're truly a Renaissance woman. I wanted to first thank the colleague that was on here, the audience member who I'm still learning how to use PowerPoint on a share screen. So they mentioned that when my cursor is moving, when I'm looking at the chat, you actually see it. So apologies for the interruption. However, because this is kind of weird, I realized, Miho, we skipped a Kerouac one. So please forgive me and
Hmm,
because this I had
great.
no idea
Yes.
that he
Oh,
had.
right. Okay. Yes, Jack Kerouac, I mean, is my favorite beat poet. And he wrote amazing haiku. And he called this American lines. He was probably the first one said, forget about 575. We do American things. So he wrote a beautiful, beautiful haiku. And also, I probably have the information in the PDF, maybe not, but if you Google Jack Kerouac haiku, YouTube, he read his haiku with music, and it's so enjoyable. So yes, you can just Google his name, haiku and jazz, and something's gonna pop up. And I hope you listen to it. It's really nice.
Thank you for alerting us. I really myself had no idea that Richard Wright had written. And after you had sent me the information for the PowerPoint, I dove in. And so thank you for introducing me to that. Now you're going to give us a very fun workshop like you would normally in one of your online classes. So it's an honor to have this. Thank you so much. So let me go into the next section, but why don't you take a moment and just have some water? As a family caregiver, I've always said it's so important to do self-care, of which the most basic is hydrate. So
I'm
thank you.
gonna try.
Yes, thank you all so much for the wonderful engagement in the chat. I realize that the next time I do this, I am going to have to learn how to look at the chat and look at the screen at the same time, but we definitely will be calling out some of your feedback. But this workshop now goes into our audience participation, and what you've designed for us is fascinating. So let us start.
Okay. Okay. So I was talking about surprise in poetry, about fireflies and dumpster, right? So I was reading a few haiku, and I was getting ready to go into school classrooms, and I was looking for some fun exercise, and I found many haiku that I could use. Okay, let's see the first slide, please. So Gary Gay is a pretty famous contemporary haiku poet. He has a lot of a great sense of humor. So this is 2 lines out of 3. Old retriever. So you have the image right away. He opens one eye. What would you say in the third line? Old retriever. He opens one eye. If you have some ideas, you can write them in the chat or. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Old retriever, he opens one eye at the tossed stick. He can't bother. I had a old yellow lab years ago, and yes, as they get older, they're not gonna go after a tossed stick or anything. Like my dog really never went for a stick. So maybe this one is not all that surprising, but, make you smile. Okay. So we're going to look at another one. So this one, let's spend a little time on this one. Weightlifter. See the big guy. Slowly lifting. What is he lifting? So if you write a weight, I respectfully ignore it. So most boring answer would be a weight. So
Okay, Miho,
weightlifter slowly lifting.
we're getting
Yes,
things like the curtain
right. Let me
rises,
see.
a
Yep.
tiny baby, all of today's burdens, a heavy load, baby
Oh,
daughter,
yes.
sky high.
Oh, right. Oh, it's fun. Okay. So let's see. The teacup. I can see like a grandmother's delicate teacup is maybe pinking standing up and weightlifter slowly lifting the teacup. I started laughing when I saw this haiku for the first time. Such a wonderful image. Okay, so I think you're getting hung of it, right? Okay, so let's spend some more time. Downpour. It's raining, and somehow you went into the tent or the cottage or the house of the palm reader. What's happening there? Downpour, the palm reader. Predict the snow.
We have reading the rain, predicting a storm, without umbrella, wants
See.
tea leaves,
Mhm.
sun again, glasses.
Okay, so Lily gave us the answer here. There was one pretty close. Somebody said cleaning eyeglasses. It's kind of close, but yeah, this one, yeah, it's similar. Downpour, the palm reader, that's her nails. It has nothing to do with palm reading, but she's doing her nails. But on the rainy, lazy day, it's kind of nice. It's really fun. Yes, these are all the Gary Gay's haiku. I'm just borrowing his haiku and hiding the last line. No matter where I stand, okay, no matter where I stand, what? There I am. The earth still
There I
spins.
am.
Sun
The
yeah.
earth spins. I remain
The
tall.
sun fit. Shadow. Yeah, my
My
shadow.
shadow
Very
follows.
that's very poetic. The bus arrives. I want to keep reading this. I want to sit down. Okay. So he wrote, no matter where I stand, barbecue smoke. Well, we are just all of a sudden somebody's backyard, on a hot day, and I really don't want to be in the smoke, but no matter where, the smoke follow us. That's really interesting. People's brain working so hard.
We will
Okay.
definitely be sharing the chat
Uh-huh.
with you. We have some buddy poets and longtime poets here. This is wonderful.
Okay. After falling down, she asks for a band-aid. And then, after falling down, she asks for a band-aid.
And a kiss. I like that.
Nice.
Smiles for her doll to heal me. Barbie is hurt. She grasps her lollipop. And a hug. Quiet time. Unexpected help.
Somebody was pretty close, right? Didn't we
Right, I
see like
know.
a Barbie doll? Okay. After falling down, she asked for a band-aid for her doll too. Huh. Okay. Is this all we had? We have some more. Oh yes, that was it. If there are any questions or comment, or if anybody wants to share haiku, I'll be happy to introduce that to everybody. So, see. And there's a question. Yes, these don't reference nature. Yes, I know. However, I think it's a comment that these haiku, it's called a haiku, but it's not. Sorry, I keep my water bottle. Mention nature, and many haiku these days do not. I subscribe to journals of Haiku Society of America. Many haikus do not talk about nature. And also, if you have heard of senryu, senryu is same format as haiku, but which does not require nature or season. And it's almost always talk about human psychologies. So if we strictly go by whether there is a mention of season or nature, and yes, they are not haiku. However, if we consider us part of nature, so what the people feel, our feelings, as part of nature, and it is a nature haiku. So, the things and well, non-living things and living things, or people and things, and mind and body. If you take sort of everything holistically, that's my view. But I think as long as we're talking about people, we are talking about the world, and that includes, a nature, and we are in the nature. We are the nature. So that's one interpretation. But yes, I understand that typical haiku, strict definition in Japanese is season word is required. Season word meaning there's one word. For example, short night is the season word for summer. So if you say short nights, the night is too short, which means maybe you want to be in the bed longer, but you have to get up. You can say it, and then we know that's already summer. And there is a dictionary of season words, and it's sometimes surprising. I think like a moon is, of course, we can see the moon all year round, but the moon, full moon is a season word for autumn because that's when it's most beautiful. So in Japanese, I think season word, so that means nature, is really, really important. One of the most important things. And also 575 syllables is almost, it's just in our blood almost. How I remember phone numbers. Also, I do it in 575. It's really funny. My mother's phone number was 045-731-6460. And I remember it 045-731-6460 in 575. So it's in my head. I make changes to the rhythm. Everything's 575. So for us, as a summary, 575 sound and the season word is essential part of haiku. But once you cross the border, it come in here in a different sensibility. And America is a big country, and on a one day in spring, there are different springs. Sometimes in Seattle it's snowing, and in Miami it's all summer. So if you consider all that, it's still haiku, I think.
Well, I've got two questions for you. One
Uh-huh.
is, what is it koan, Koan? What is
Uh-huh.
koan?
So, well, koan is it's not a haiku or poetry terminology. It's a Zen terminology, and it's a question that Zen master asks his student, and there is really no answer to it. And the question is, sorry, I can't think of anything very quickly, but it's almost like why did chicken cross the road? And the answer is really not an answer, right? It's sometimes what is bigger, orange, or some very silly questions. But Zen master asked the students at the right time of his training that helps him, reach nirvana or just come to the next stage. So it's a Zen terminology, and it's a question the master asks students. And it's a very strange one, yes.
And the next question is, could you explain again the difference between haiku and tanka?
Oh, okay. So tanka is longer than haiku. And tanka used to be called waka, but they are 5-7-5-7-7. So it's almost everything is combination of 5 and 7s in our language. And then tanka has longer history. And I mentioned the anthology in the 8th century, tanka. It used to be called waka. Waka means Japanese songs. That's compared to Chinese poetry, Chinese songs. We mentioned that's a Japanese song, not the Chinese song. We made that distinction. So that was called waka. But then now tanka means short song. There are some longer songs, so it's called tanka. But anyway, difference between tanka haiku today is tanka is longer, 2 line more, maybe 7 syllables. But then again, tanka syllables are also very flexible. Nowadays, people don't necessarily write 5-7-5-7-7. And in English, it's very difficult to distinguish tanka from just a short poem. So I am actually taking a class with Tanka Society of America. I know quite a lot about Japanese tanka, but American tanka is relatively new to me. But at the same time, I really enjoy writing them. The 5 line it's a vast space for me. So it's very interesting. So it's basically tanka is longer than haiku, and tanka has a space to talk about emotions. It's not just the images, but you can say a little bit more. That's the difference.
Thank you,
And
Mi.
what distinguishes haiku from other poetry forms, since there's no requirement for syllables?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I spend hours and hours talking about what is haiku, and at the end, one of the participants asks each other, says, "What is haiku?" And then we start laughing. That's the answer. But no, haiku is it's a short poem, and that captures the moment. And you say as little as possible, but you try to suggest the rest of it. So that's the essence of haiku, which any short poem can do. And each writer decides, do I really strictly go for 575? But I think at least I am clear. I'm going to write haiku, or this is haiku. I'm going to finish this poem as a haiku. And what is my standard for that to be haiku? So a lot of it is up to you. However, if you think you are following the spirit of haiku, the capturing the moment, and then you can take what you want to take in, but produce something beautiful that touch other people's heart. And that's a haiku, that's a poetry.
Miho, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Trudy, because we have had so many wonderful questions and feedback. I actually see some participants raising their hand. Just real quick, we knew that Miho's teachings for us would really raise a lot of interest. So I want to just let everyone know that we will invite her back. She's going to return to Tuesday Explorers, and we'll be putting in the chat and in the email going out to you all her next event with us. But let me at least give her a little bit of time to talk about her books, because for me to learn about her writing, it was to see how you developed as a poet. I found on the internet 3 covers. Give us a little bit of background about each of the books, please. I know that the one on the far right is your most current recent.
Yes. So yes, The Waiting for Sunset to Bury Red Camellias is my latest book, which came out maybe 2 months ago. It's published by a small publisher in Charleston, and my publisher was the former poet laureate of Charleston. And he is really a cool person, and we are going to read together on some occasions. I was very happy that he offered to publish my book, because I think we can do a lot in the South Carolina, North Carolina, in the South and beyond, because he is a poet, but he's also a musician, and he designed this cover. He's a graphic designer, really talented person, and I am looking forward to working with him. And my poems, the first one is the Today Fish Only. That book came published by a Singaporean publisher called Mass Paper Press. The editor publisher also worked so hard on this cover. All those items, cutlet, cherry blossoms, potatoes, pistachio, bullet train, they all appear in my poems. So I really enjoyed making this book. And second one's Beautiful Flower. My poems been almost always short. Maybe next time when I come back, I like to share some poems from other books as well. I write about the place I live. I write about my family. I write about, these days, a lot about birds and ocean, because I live near the shore. And I write about people, feelings, memories, and it's all short. So it's over before you know it. I won't bore you.
No.
So these are my books.
Yes, and Miho's very kind. She has given us the information to be in contact with her. Because we want to honor everyone's time, we will end the formal program on the hour. So I'll ask Trudy to come back on to give everyone farewell greetings. But because we at AARP know that it's all about community, we have the ability to stay on for a few more minutes. And I do know that there had been audience participants who had raised their hand. So we can have you join us after the formal program is, because it's such a rare opportunity to have a talented poet like Miho. So take it away, Trudy, and thank you all so much for joining us today.
I will remind folks that in Zoom webinar, we don't have the ability to acknowledge the raised hand icon, but we'll stay on for an extra few minutes after I stop talking to try to address any last minute questions as well. But on behalf of AARP, I'd like to thank you again for joining us. Thank you to Miho for sharing her time, her knowledge, her expertise. This has been very enjoyable. Our Tuesday Explorer will continue next week, and we invite you to join us. You can see a listing of our additional events at aarp.org/Virginia events. So until next time, we encourage you to stay curious. I need water. And keep exploring. And we do have a couple of minutes. So Lily, if you want to address some of the other questions that have come in.
Yes, let me turn off the slide. Just so everyone knows, we will be sending out this in PDF format. There'll be more information about Miho at the end of this PowerPoint. But please go ahead, those of you who'd like to stay on for a few extra minutes, go ahead and put in the chat any questions and we'll definitely take them, please. Thank you. Let's see. Right now in the chat, oh, everyone said they've had a wonderful time. This is wonderful. Yes. Any other? Yes. Any other questions? Miho, what prompts you? I have a question to what inspires you? Like one day you're out, I know you do swimming. What is it that you would actually then put down on paper or on your computer?
Sometimes I stand and just keep observing and then try to understand what's going on. And then yesterday I was watching in the on the windy beach, how girls were trying to feed themselves. It was amazing movement going on, and I started to recognize patterns and what they were doing. But they don't necessarily become a poem right away. But I try to observe, try to remember. I come home, I write that down. And then sometimes I force myself to make a beginning of a poem, because if it's just a note, they go somewhere and I'll never do anything for a year. So I try to force myself to get something started. So it starts unconsciously, but becomes very conscious from certain point of time, trying to finish it. Finishing is the hardest part of doing anything, isn't it?
Yes, that is so true. There are so many people who are asking about whether there will be a recording. Indeed, that's one of the nicest thing about the AARP Virginia Tuesday Explorers. We know that lifelong learning may happen anytime, so we will send out the recording. It will be a link, and you will go to the AARP Virginia YouTube area, and you'll be able to see it. I think everyone has a very interesting question. What distinguishes haiku from other poetry in your mind? I know you answered that a little bit, but if we had to succinctly say that, how would we say that?
To me personally, I guess it's tradition, or I think we all have cultural ancestors in the back of our heads. It's different, but when it touches that, to me, that is haiku. But at the same time, sometimes I call it haiku if it's short. Part of me is very lazy, so I do that too. But if I can say something with just a few words, and if people even just stop 10 seconds and think about it, more than the number of words, then in a way, that for me, it's a successful haiku. I have other short poems, but I think effect is a little different. So I guess you have to go back to the tradition. Something that I understood for a long time as a haiku has an effect on my lines. Then to me, that is really a haiku. Yes.
That's a beautiful answer. Just real quick, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but often children are taught to recite poems before they even really understand. So maybe from your childhood, did you ever learn haiku so that even now, all these decades later, you can right away be able to recite a famous haiku? And then the second part of that would be, did you ever write a haiku in Japanese yourself that you can recite for us now so we can hear the sounds?
I can't remember my haiku. Sorry, you did put me on the spot. But actually, I am not a very good haiku poet in Japanese. There is a distinction. Many Japanese haiku poets only write haiku, and tanka poets write only tanka. There is a clear distinction for some reason. And I've written my tanka in Japanese was published in some places, but not haiku. I am not there yet. My English haiku is a little better. And I'm working on English tanka. So I'm still, I studied a lot about haiku. I can talk about it a lot. But to be able to talk about it, to be able to critique someone's work and to write yourself, they're also different. I'm working on it.
Lifelong learning. Absolutely.
Yes.
Miho, do you have a program coming up in New York City?
Yes, I am reading and launching my book at New York Public Library branch on the 23rd of February. Yes, I was invited to do so. Excited reading on the Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
And if any, I know I saw some folks from Western New York. I don't know if I saw anyone from the New York City area, but there is a link in the chat if individuals would like more information about that program.
Yes. Thank you both, Amber and Trudy, for always being right on the spot with all the information. In order to have everyone understand that this is truly a series during the coldest months of the year, January to April, AARP Virginia makes these available every Tuesday afternoon. And I just wanted to give a shout out because next week we have a very interesting program of a publisher who is doing interesting things in her, what we would call retirement years. And it's something that she will share her life story. But the reason I mention it's Mrs. Tortoise Isselhart is she has actually given us her own take on what haiku is. May I read that? So Miho, our next guest, there's wonderful linkages between all of you. Tortoise
Yes.
Isselhart says, haiku is a gift of essence with the meaning or meanings left up to the reader.
Yes. Yes, she's absolutely right. We can't write an essay about what I want to say in haiku. So yes, it's up to the reader, isn't it?
This is why audience participation, because we want to honor everyone's time. I'll just ask one last question from our audience. If someone is bilingual, as you are, what is your sort of choice between writing in your native language, Japanese, or in English? Any thoughts on that question?
It's intentional from the beginning. I don't decide which language I'll write after I start writing. If it's an assignment, of course, that's already given from the beginning. And my go-to language for poetry is English. Prose, I am writing prose in English, but it's a lot easier for me in Japanese. And interesting thing is, I do not think in language very much. I'm thinking in images and charts and directions and colors and textures. And then I go look for words. So the language it's in a way secondary. So depending on if I'm sending this out to English language journal and it's English. So sorry, is it an answer? Is this an answer? Right. So It depends, but in a way, it doesn't matter which one I goes to. So depend if I'm sending it to English language publication, of course it's in English. If it's in Japanese, one Japanese. But in my head, it begins in non-language space anyway. So I could go either way. But I like poetry in English very much. Free verse in English is what I really like most.
That's the perfect answer. That is the perfect end of this wonderful together.
Perfect answer and a perfect ending for today.
Yes.
Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
We will see all the rest of you next Tuesday, 3 o'clock East Coast time. Thanks for joining us. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Miho. That was just beautiful. Thank you all for joining.
You.
Bye now. We'll leave the webinar. Thank you.